Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted and privileged to welcome an accomplished entrepreneur, a good friend, a fellow member of the YPO from Hyderabad, India, Samantha Reddy. Samantha, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here, Ashutosh.
Thank you.
Really nice reconnecting.
Thank you. Samantha is the co-founder of B2B Software Technologies, which is a BSE listed company. She's passionate about CSR and social impact. The celebrated novelist Yadana Pudi Sulochana Rani Garu scripted a book in 2009 named Vijeta, encapsulating part of Samantha's cancer recovery journey, and we're going to be talking about that today. Samantha has also been conferred with the Woman Achiever Award by the state of Telangana. And as I mentioned, she's a fellow member of the YPO. So Samantha, before we talk about your own cancer journey, tell me a little bit about yourself in brief.
I'm a very happy person in general, I think. Very resilient and able to bounce back from situations. I love a good work-life balance. In fact, I like more fun than work. Let me tell you right about that. I love traveling to offbeat places. Like recently I went to Georgia, and Georgia is not on anybody's radar, but I've been tracking all these ex-Soviet countries. Like I've been to Uzbekistan a while ago, before that to Estonia. So I like to go and learn about cultures of different people. I'm very interested in history. Okay, so that's one part of it. I love reading. I love cooking. So, and what is it about me? Let me say in a sentences. I love life, and I believe that no matter what puts you back or holds you back, just do what you need to do. So I have this bucket list. Oh, I have ready-made itineraries for 4 places or 5 places at any point in time. I'm just ready to go out and explore the world. And what else can I say about myself? I've tried to kind of push my boundaries despite some of my health conditions. And I think my soul is in a hurry. And I have so many things that I'd like to do. And I try my best.
And I'm sure you'll do all of them and take every item on your bucket list.
But it keeps increasing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that it should. So let's talk about your victory with cancer. Tell me about your cancer journey and how did you first discover that you had this and what was your initial reaction?
So I was 25. I was expecting my second child and I thought my world was complete. Till I think life had other plans for me. So I guess like any other woman, I went for my checkup in the 3rd month and went to get my basic scan and my blood test. And then in those days, we were not so high tech, right? We're talking 95. So apparently the diagnostic person called up my gynecologist and said, I don't have good news, and I'd like you to tell her to come with someone tomorrow to see you. Well, the not so good news was my WBC was hitting 250 to 300,000. And I kept putting on weight and I was wondering what was happening. It was actually my spleen getting enlarged, and I was diagnosed with this leukemia called chronic myeloid leukemia, CML. It completely shook my world. So metaphoric and literal.
Yeah, absolutely. And what have been some of the very challenging aspects of your treatment and your recovery process?
So way back in 95, there was only one way to treat this disease, chronic myeloid leukemia, was bone marrow transplant. It's called BMT. So you do it either from a bone marrow registry, like you can get a match, like you get a blood match, or you can do it from any of your closer relatives. They do a test called HLA, which is human leukocyte antigen testing. And when they did the test, unfortunately, in the West, they used to have bone marrow. They were much more advanced. So they had a bone marrow registry, but unfortunately for Asian Caucasian, like our blood, we didn't really have a very standard process to do that.
Mm.
And my closest match was my daughter, and she was 3 years old. And they said they couldn't do a BMT till she was at least 7 or 8 because they take blood from the marrow and they rejuvenate the blood like a stem cell.
Yeah.
So I really didn't have any. So I had to be on some kind of medication because BMT was not an option for at least 4 or 5 years. So I used to be on different protocols. The first one, so interferon alpha 2B is a drug that I was using. So my first hospital was Tata Memorial, Dr. Advani, an inspiration himself because he was in a wheelchair. And when I went to see him, I think he really inspired me to, do it no matter what kind of thing. But when Tata Memorial wrote me off because BMT was not an option, then I had to go to the US to check what protocols and clinical trials, all clinical trials that were in vogue at that point in time. So as a process of that, I moved through 2 hospitals. One was City of Hope in LA, where they increased my dose of interferon alpha 2B. But after a year and a half, it was a hopeless situation. And they said I was absolutely not reacting to it. My body wasn't reacting to it. So luckily, a good friend of ours in the US, a doctor friend of my husband and mine, actually found in the New England Medical Journal that there was a new protocol by this doctor called Dr. Kantarjian. It's an Armenian doctor. That's why I'd love to go to the Caucasus.
Yeah.
And it was an MD Anderson in Houston. And it was a combination of interferon alpha 2B with cytarabine, which is a chemotherapy drug. So, well, I was on that protocol for 5 years, and that really kind of, my first, shall I say, recovery started. 95 is when I was diagnosed. In 98. So I think 3 years were pretty much a living hell, because we just didn't know which way it was going. And in the US, they really have this tendency to push your medication where you cannot endure anymore. So I had to take a Tylenol every 4 hours. It was a really, really tough time. So
I can imagine. But tell me, this kind of a toll, which is both emotional and physical, how did you cope with it?
I think my daughter was 3, and I still remember my mother-in-law telling me that nobody will take care of your daughter the way you will. I think that was a huge inspiration. And I think my family was my complete rock, And I think one thing that I really appreciate about my family, even to date, even though if I'm facing any medical issue, they're very stoic, like they're very accepting. They let me be. And I think that's so important for anybody fighting anything, because I think the worst thing to do is like to play a victim card and, try to, be taking self-pity or wallow in self-pity. So I think just letting me be was the biggest gift they gave, and being there for me. For example, if I wanted to travel, they would just say, oh, okay, did you take your medicine? Are you sure you're following your protocol? Do you have an SOS number? So they would never try to say, hey, you know what, you're not feeling well and you're not doing well and you can't go. I mean, that was never the issue. So I think that kind of support really helped me a lot. And at that point in time, I think definitely the religious scriptures, like I used to read a lot, like the Bhagavatam. I did all the books of Bhagavatam. Then I used to read a lot of Swami Vivekananda's books. I think a lot of our Indian philosophy, I used to do so Lord Shiva is the Lord for, right? So Mrityunjaya Mantram, and doing going to specific dates every month, going and doing the Abhishekam in the temple. Actually, that crutch really helped me. I'm not hugely a religious person. I believe there is a higher power there and there is a universal power, but I think my crutch in religion and my family really helped me through, and just letting me be, letting me be. And of course, I think my inspiration was, motivation, my daughter, of course, she actually was my, raison d'etre, reason for being.
Correct. What a great story. Thank you. And there's so much to learn, in every little bit that you've just told me about, the steps that you went through. But Samantha, tell me, were there any lifestyle changes you made after coming out of the cancer, and how have they impacted your own well-being?
So first of all, so let me just explain cancer as a journey, right? So you get diagnosis, and then you have remission.
Correct.
So typically cancer remission, a 5-year timeline is when cancer is considered in remission That's usually the timeline. But if you
Correct.
see my history, like 95, the drug that I really that I took for 22 years later, actually got FDA approval in 2001.
Mm-hmm.
So just to go back to my earlier story, so
Mm.
it was MD Anderson, and then we just got to know that there was this new miracle drug that Novartis was releasing, and people could get onto clinical trial at Stanford.
Mm.
And that was the drug that I went on in 2000. So 2001, they got the FDA approval, and that's the drug I actually used that actually helped me with my lifestyle and helped me coming to your question about
Mm.
the drugs before that, really didn't give me too much of leeway because chemotherapy is tough. You know,
Mm.
I mean, I had 6 years of chemotherapy. In
Mm.
fact, I always say jokingly that I have a chemo brain. If anybody says, "Oh, you said that and you did that," I said, "No, remember, I have a chemo brain, so I don't remember anything."
Mm.
You know, I
Mm.
seriously don't.
Yeah.
So I had chemotherapy every day. I used to self-inject myself with a
Mm.
chemotherapy drug, which was cytoarabine.
Mm.
And even interferon was an injection. So I
Mm.
actually learned to inject myself on my stomach or that's just like people who have insulin or whatever. So my actual return to lifestyle happened maybe early 2000, because I started the medicine, like the
Mm.
pills,
Mm.
Glivec.
Mm.
And I really have to talk about Novartis and Glivec and what they've done. I mean, and I also have to tell you that Dan Vasella and me are friends on LinkedIn, and he actually messaged me. So that was like a very big thing for me in my life.
Mm.
So Novartis released this drug, and Dan Vasella went back to sleep and said, okay, this drug is going to change the life of millions of CML patients all over, but what would happen to the developing countries because they cannot
Mm.
afford it? Obviously, it was under patent, and the cost was around $2,000 a month.
Mm.
He actually floated this program called the GPAP,
Mhm.
which is a Glivec patient assistance program, where all the developing nations could get the drug free of cost.
Mm.
And it was run by a foundation called Max Foundation in India.
Mhm.
So I joined them in around 2004 or 2005, once I got to know about them. And they actually supported a lot of, I think to date, they support around 18,000 patients in India.
Wow. Mm.
So my lifestyle, coming back to my lifestyle change, actually in 2000 went back to normal,
Mm.
normalcy as much as it could. But I used to break all the rules. If the doctors say, oh, if your hemoglobin is 8, you're not supposed to exercise, but I used to do my aerobics. So I
Mm.
always used to push the boundaries a little bit just to make sure that my body was fit enough and
Mm.
was
Mm.
within my endurance,
Mm.
and tried to really keep it up and try to keep up a lifestyle like any usual human being. In fact, I have a lot of friends early 2000 who tell me, we didn't even know that you had an issue.
Mm.
Why tell people? I mean, if you can live it
I
and you can do
agree.
it.
No, in fact, when I heard about it, I said you and I were on the board of YPO together, and I had no
Yes.
idea for
Yeah.
2 years. So I had
I
no
can't do
idea.
late nights with Glivec.
Mm.
I was taking Glivec too. I mean, when we met, so
Mm.
I can't do very late nights. That's the only,
Mm.
I need my 7 hours sleep.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. So tell me, Samantha, how has, the fact that you have pulled out of such a challenge influenced your future goals and your aspirations?
I think at age 25, I was just kind of meandering through life and very happy, go lucky. And I don't think I had any specific mission or purposes. But I guess once I realized the mortality of life, that's when I made my bucket list. And I said, oh, damn it, if it's going to be less time, then we better just get our act together and do
Correct.
something.
Correct.
And I made a very big bucket list. And thankfully, and I've done a lot of it. So it was so I got married at a very young age. So I always wanted to go back and study.
Mm.
So that was number one on my bucket list. So I think the first change was actually, I think, realizing that death is not very far away
Mm.
and acceptance of it.
Mm.
If it has to happen, because if you realize that for 6 years, we didn't know there was a cure till
Mm.
Glivec actually came on board, right?
Right.
So that was a tough call. We didn't know which way we are headed. So whether it was vacations or whatever it is, we had to, I had to say, okay, I have to do it now. I don't know whether I can do it again.
Correct. Correct.
So that was a call I took. So
Amazing.
the first thing is making my list of things that I wanted to do, go back to school, and I wanted to work for corporate India. I worked for Infosys for 3 years. Then my startup, of course. I think one thing that really helped me through this process is, anybody with mind is your enemy and your friend.
Correct.
So how can you make it your friend? I think keep it busy, keep it focused, keep it, do something you're passionate about, have a goal, and keep it going. And you just don't know how the time flies.
Correct.
Because the idle mind is the worst thing,
Absolutely.
for us. So I think,
Absolutely.
and the thing that really cancer helped me with is, I have a very low threshold of happiness. I'm very happy if I get up in the morning and I see the sun, I see the trees, and I don't have a headache, and I'm feeling great, and I'm feeling fine. I mean, that's happiness. So I think your threshold of happiness is so low, and you have gratitude for such small things in life, and I think you cherish. Well, the other thing is, I think when you're sick, you really know who loves you, because literally they come together for you. And I
Correct.
think that's a blessing in a way, because people show that affection and love, and
Absolutely.
that feels great. I mean, people, you always show affection to people and say, oh, somebody passed away, say, oh my God, he was such a great person. But I think one thing that people have when they're going through these life-threatening diseases is they know who care and who are with them, all the time. I
Absolutely.
think that's and 100% a positive. And I think one thing I learned is, look, life is what happens to you. How you react to it and how you
Correct.
respond to it is in your
Correct.
hands. So you choose your choice, you make your destiny, you write your story. So I could always say, hey, cancer put me back and I had 6 years of my life were gone, or cancer put me back on track and gave me such a fulfilling life that I'm able to live every day, every hour, with such deep feeling and emotion, and so fulfilling. I mean, there are two ways you can look at
Yeah.
anything, right? You
Well
choose.
said. Well
Yeah.
said.
So
Well said. No, not only, I mean, are you, as you said, got a low threshold of happiness, but I think you are a very, very strong individual. And that's what is coming across very clearly, just determined to, get what you wanted, get well, and stay well. I think that's very important. But tell me, Samantha, were there any unexpected positive outcomes or life lessons that you picked up or learned through this journey?
Unexpected life lessons is, I think life is what you make it. People say, oh, there's a good life, there's a bad life. I don't think there's anything as good or a bad. It's just what you make of it, what one makes of it, really, and how you build your story
Correct.
around your life is what I think I learned.
Correct.
And no, like I said earlier, small things make me happy, and
Absolutely.
I'm happy just right now looking at my granddaughter. I mean, it's just like so much pleasure and so much happiness, because when you never expect it and it happens, there's so much more joy. I think a lot of things in life we expect, oh, we'll do this, we'll do that, we'll do that, we'll do that, and then it doesn't happen. People get disappointed. But when the expectations are so low,
Correct.
and then miracles happen, and you are just grateful.
But tell me again, we live in society, and society doesn't easily understand cancer. Did you face any misconceptions or stigmas when people started to understand what you were going through?
So what I did actually, okay, so when I was going through this journey, I realized that there was such a lack of awareness. So at that point in time, I joined this cancer awareness program that is for 4 to 5 years. What we used to do is we tied up with some doctors at the hospital, with oncologists, and we used to go out and actually tell people that cancer is not the death knell. Cancer is not the end of life. I think our great Bollywood movies have not done very good job with it, because
Absolutely.
everybody will, like, if it's cancer, they'll be like vomiting blood and then they're gone. Then the death scene comes. And that's really not the case. I mean, there
Correct.
are so many survivors, and it's so important to spread that message. The first thing is cancer is not end of life. I think very, very important. And I
Absolutely.
did that, yeah, for a long time. Sorry, can you just come back to the question again? Because I lost my train of thought there. So you
No,
said
I was just asking, were there any misconceptions or stigmas that you faced?
no stigmas, but let me tell you one thing. I think with anything in life, whether it's grief or with life-threatening disease, I had an issue that every time I would go out into society or go out for like a gathering or anything of people I didn't know very well, the first question will say in Telugu, I mean, they'll say, "Oh, how are you? I heard you were not well, and how are you feeling?" And that would completely break me down. I would hate to hear about my sickness when I went out. For the longest time, I never wanted to actually meet people or do anything or even meet anybody who would ask me any questions. So I was very
Right.
happy meeting completely new people. So I was extremely happy running my company from 2000 to 2011, where I traveled the world. We had an office in Germany. We had an office. I mean, I used to go to a lot of Europe, meet people who absolutely knew zero about me. That was what. So people actually asking questions, um, knowing that knowing the answer was very debilitating actually.
Yep.
So, and even more recently when I had a cardiac issue, anybody would try to call me or this thing, I'll say, hey, if it's about the surgery, I don't want to talk about it. Anything else I'm happy to speak to. So,
Amazing. Amazing. My next question is that, there are so many people who are faced with these challenges. What would your advice be to people who are confronted with this challenge? First, of course, when people who have got it themselves, and what would your advice be to family members? You've had a very supporting and strong and caring family.
me and husband, and my
And
husband
of
is
course,
a
husband.
rock.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
No, I think the first thing that I would tell anybody is that this could happen to anyone, right? So first is, do you ever question when anything good happens to you? You don't, right? Question if something bad happens, see how you can work with it and what you can do best with it. Because things can happen to anybody and at any time. So the first thing is really not playing the victim card and trying to see what best one can do with it within their circumstances, what best they can do physically, and try to push your boundaries a little bit. If the doctor says, okay, walk for 10 minutes, why don't you walk for 15 minutes and see how you feel? Because it's about building endurance. And when you feel better, you think better, and you are a better person to be with. I think so. That's number one. Second is have something that you look. We are all very, very blessed in so many ways. So how can we give back? And one thing that really helped me from very early on is starting my, they say the second half of your life. I started that very early, right, with my giving back on doing cancer awareness programs and starting my NGO in 2013. So I run a children's home for pediatric cancer children who came from underprivileged backgrounds in rural India who come for treatment to hospitals. It's St. Jude's Child Care Center. It's in Hyderabad. So we finished 10 years next year. So when you actually see a child with cancer, then you're saying, what the heck was I kicking myself at 425? Look at this kid at 3 and 4 and look what they're going through. I mean, the parents are poor and they have the most insurmountable problems in their life. And look at the way. So it's not about you anymore. When you actually see and step out and try to give back to society, you see that, I mean, yours is not a problem. I mean, there are problems and there are worse problems. So everything is relative in life, really. So once you learn that relativity, then you realize that, it's not a comparison. It's about you fixing it yourself. And about people and caregivers around, I think just let people be and just be there for them. I mean, that's all I would say. But once in a while, the older people and the generation, even my mother sometimes tend to say, oh, she's not feeling well. So you'll say, never say that.
Right.
So you'll say, she's feeling well. That's why. So always trying to change their, shall I say, the way they actually address you, try to do that. And letting you feel that you are a regular, ordinary person, because it plays on the human psyche. Because bad enough that your mind plays games with you and plays monkey tricks with you, trying to tell you, oh my God, why did this happen? Of course, you have your down moments. You don't want people around you giving you that too, right? So you want them to give you the strength and the encouragement and the motivation. I think these are the things.
Amazing. And I have time for one more question for you. And the last question is really, I want to end on a high, and which is, you spoke about your own appreciation of the Bhagavatam and a lot of the scriptures. Tell me a little bit more about how have your own beliefs in spirituality changed in any way?
So I learned the Vishnu Sahasranamam when I was sick. I was very, very sick. I thought I could never do it. 108 verses. I thought it's impossible.
Yeah.
But I learned it and I had a mentor who, thankfully helped me through. But I feel that the chanting and the echoes and the mantras, look, I don't know about the physical being, about the people, but there is some power in it. There is some resonance in it. There is something that it gives you inside. So I don't know what it is, but it calms me down. It makes me feel better to date, whether it's small things like even Hanuman Chalisa or Lingashtam, because I'm not an overly religious person, but I believe that there is some power in all this, and it gives you a lot of energy and fortitude, and I think so. That's pretty much my understanding of.
Amazing.
It's a way of life. I don't think
Absolutely.
it's any. Yeah.
Well said. Well said. And on that note, Samantha, thank you so much for speaking to me about your own amazing journey. I mean, I have spoken to others who have gone through the same journey, but I must compliment you on the incredible positivity that you have brought into our conversation. It's amazing how easily you have spoken about your own battle, which a lot of people don't want to talk about. It's also amazing of how much gratitude you have, not just with Srinivas, your husband, your family, but people who are around you, people who have supported you in this battle that you have gone through. And finally, thank you for all the amazing thoughts that you've given for a lot of people who may be confronted with a similar challenge sometime in their lives. As you said, there's nothing special about why or this impacts or affects any family or any individual. Thank you for speaking to me, and good luck to you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.